Introducing your hosts from Collingwood, Ontario, Canada, Jack Edwards, and his partner from Dallas, Texas, by way of Port Arthur, Texas, Big George. Together, they are the North-South Connection.
You see this energy?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It's a Tuesday night. You know what that means. We're talking bullshit and wrestling.
More wrestling than bullshit, though. Wrestling than bullshit.
Wrestling and bullshit go hand in hand, though. That's the great thing. And it's we're happy to be here, happy to be talking another great topic. I'm Jack Edwards alongside my man Big George. Big in Canada, big in Texas. It's going to be big in Kansas City in a couple weeks.
Oh,
it's coming quick.
Yeah, no. See, we're about 15 days away from the Kansas City extravaganza that is our trip to, Arrowhead Stadium, the barbecue that is Kansas City, the adventures that will be brought to us and, that we get into in Kansas City. I think that's going to be one of the most fun times this year that we'll both have. Of course, fun fact, everybody will be meeting each other for the first time in Kansas City. So he will actually see how tall and big I am versus what it just says on the screen. See, you can only see so much in this box. So I'm ready to see the wows, the what happens, the how big are you, all that questions. Like, I'm ready for it all. But we're here to talk wrestling. And we're here to talk wrestling about family. Because family's so
Family Feuds. It is. And it was Thanksgiving here. It was Thanksgiving. We just had Thanksgiving. Had Thanksgiving at my mom's house. And it was so it was fun, and I got thinking about the Jimmy and Jay thing that's going on again, and how like what's the topic? And I'm like Family Feuds, because there's been so many good ones.
Oh,
of like father, son, and that whole thing. But I just thought what a great topic. And there's been so many great families. I know WWE a few years ago put out that great family documentary. Families it was really good, and there's so many great ones, but like some Family Feuds didn't work. Now generally we're talking about, I think, mostly the real life blood families, but I am good with a good wrestling family feud, if you will. So I'm okay with that too.
But today, as far as the top 5 goes, we'll keep it original families. We don't want to kind of go outside of the actual, because there's enough families to go around. But this top 5, this is going to strictly be the family feuds that you've seen, kind of like you couldn't pick a side, or you picked a side and you just didn't want to see the other one fall off, or you just couldn't believe that they were actually, feuding at the moment. So we're definitely going to take a look at those. That's going to be the top 5, but the honorable mention list is going to be a wild one today. I wouldn't be so excited for any other list today, because the honorable mention list will mention names just like such, like Kane and the Undertaker, potentially. I'm going to give an early honorable mention. And I didn't even tell John this, so this is going to be his first time hearing it, so y'all see his reaction when I say it. My honorable mention is the Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth. Family Feuds. Because, of course, they're not necessarily family, but they're connected as, anybody else in the business, more along the lines of inside and out. So that's one of my honorable mentions.
Yeah, listen.
They had a lot of things going on, but of course, when they feuded, everybody knew about it.
And it was like, and they did it. Listen, I'll tell you, I was 9 years old when that was going on, when the Mega Powers. And I live in a town called Collingwood, Ontario, which is an hour and a half. It's an hour and a half north Toronto, but it's in between. There's a town called Owen Sound, which has an Ontario Hockey League team, which is like major junior hockey. The kids here get drafted to the NHL. So it's a pretty big arena, like, 4,000 seats or so. So I watched WrestleMania 5 I watched WrestleMania 5 on closed circuit TV there. And that was Savage and Hogan with Elizabeth in the corner. And then I remember SummerSlam with Hogan and Beefcake against Savage and Zeus with Elizabeth. Yeah, like that was my mom, like she wasn't a big fan of that whole angle. I know, but like anything with Macho Man versus Elizabeth, I'm in. Absolutely, and I didn't think about it, but they were like family. You kind of knew they were.
That was more
That's
family than anything. Like if
yeah.
family in WWE who didn't have the last name already, that was probably the closest relationship to not necessarily being family that WWE had. I mean, to be honest, if it was a little bit deeper than that, they would have probably been blood. And I think that's just how deep that relationship went with Miss Elizabeth and Macho. Of course, you know, outside of the ring, they still had a relationship. And then, of course, that kind of went sour and some things went left here. And of course, that was almost a real family feud at a certain point. So I had to mention it at an audible mention spot because it's not going to make the top 5 due to the fact that everybody else is actually going to make the list.
Well, see, Chris, I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, Chris might be foreshadowing, possibly, but possibly not. So
let me kick it off hot.
Yeah,
let me kick it off hot. Okay, so I got one, and it's like, I got to give a shout out, and I have to say it. A shout out to the ECW crowd, the Sandman versus Raven, involving the Sandman's son and his ex-wife. That was some good stuff. That was really good. Like, I mean, when he did the crucifixion, they did the story when they did the crucifixion, and some people were upset. I'm like, I'm not religious, so it didn't impact me that way. I thought it was an interesting spot. But like the stuff they did and the heat that kind of Raven had and as a heel, and he's not a guy you hear a lot about. But I mean, especially in everybody pop Macho for pros. I mean, you kidding me?
Yeah.
But like I just think that thing, like, again, I like to recognize some people that may not get recognized. And when I think it's Family Feuds, I'm like, that was one that was really well done. Raven was a great heel. Sandman was a great baby face. The kid did his job. The ex-wife did her job, and it got a lot of heat. And it built to kind of really the first pay-per-view was built around kind of that angle and Raven. So I gotta, I don't know. It ain't number one. I know that, but I want it in the top 5 just to give ECW some love, because ECW gets killed on every poll we do. Nobody votes for it. Like 500,000 people watch that TV. Nobody votes for it on our poll.
Hey, it happens to the best of us, and I think that's one of the things that we can't exclude ECW because of it. ECW had a lot of the superstars that we actually love and hold near and dear to our hearts today. So I think that's one of the things that we have to kind of acknowledge a little bit more on the show. Is that ECW has some great rivalries, and I think that's something that you have to really get into. But speaking of rivalries that kind of went
Family Feuds,
we got a Family Feud that I think a lot of folks would agree with is one of the most underrated Family Feuds that you can easily, kind of take into consideration. Like, this is a very prestigious family. These two members of this, family actually would probably be the more famous ones in this day, simply because they did so much. One of them is a legend through and through, and that's going to be Eddie versus Chavo Guerrero. They were
Eddie versus Chavo.
They were so in deep as far as how that family bond kind of kept breaking and kind of kept mending together, because he would look at him and be like, Uncle Eddie, all the time, Uncle Eddie, Uncle Eddie, Uncle Eddie. And it was just kind of, Eddie was doing his own thing. He didn't want Chavo around like that. He didn't think Chavo had the chops. He didn't think Chavo had it. And so him and Chavo went at it for months at a time. It was several feuds that they actually had that, a lot of people didn't really take a good look at, because it's, Eddie and Chavo, and not really people are looking at Chavo like that. But the thing about Chavo was, Chavo was great. Chavo was
really good. Yeah.
So
Chavo was awesome.
I don't look at, Eddie and Chavo as being a bad match. If you like wrestling and you love, the characters and the plot and the twist, you can see how how good these guys were with each other in the ring. So it made for everything kind of moving forward. So, I'm gonna take Chavo and Eddie on this one. So that's my pick.
I love it. I love when Chavo shaved his head in the ring. He's like, "Want me to do it? I'll do it. I'll do it." It's like, yeah. So that was a good one. And I know you're affinity for WCW, so
absolutely,
I really like that. Now, I got to go back north of the border. Where would I be, a good Canadian boy like myself, if I did not put Owen Hart and Bret Hart on the list, ladies and gentlemen? When I think of Family Feuds, and I think of he was very good. He was a good wrestler.
Good. Yes.
Yeah, really, really good. But I got to put Bret and Owen. I mean, I was 14 when that happened, and I was buying tickets to see it. I tell you this, they would come around like I would. It was, and I, my buddy and I, was his mom. I don't know how she did it, but she bought pay-per-views for us, and we watched. It was great. It was good stuff, and it was so well done. It was so well. It was not only like the wrestlers did their job, but just the way it was done. It built a star. It helped build Owen. It did what it was supposed to do, and but the work was just. Their match at WrestleMania 10 was a classic. It was just from bell to bell, it was just awesome. They had chemistry. Not every brothers maybe that ever worked had chemistry, but they definitely did. And just so I was a big.
I don't think it qualifies, Kareem. I don't think it qualifies. But anyway, that's a very hilarious moment.
Number for me, number 2 is Owen and Bret.
Okay. Yeah. I'm a WCW buff. I love a good WCW feud, and I think somebody foreshadowed this in the comments just a few moments ago. But Booker T and Stevie Ray, when Stevie Ray joined the NWO, Booker T felt so betrayed. He had been feuding with the NWO for months at that point. And they was, how the NWO was. They was trying to, if you wasn't trying to join them, they were about to jump you. And so, you got Harlem Heat, nah, not me and my brother. And then all of a sudden you got Stevie Ray, who just took out the slapjack and just threw Booker T to the wolves. And I was just like, I couldn't stand it, because I was like, as a black dude, that's all we got. That's all we had at the time. So I was just like, fuck, ain't nobody about to be good no more. But it kind of made Booker a lot better, because now he wasn't dependent on Harlem Heat to be good. Then you got Booker T, the 5-time WCW champion.
Yeah.
Then you got Booker T working in other angles and things like that without having to worry about, Stevie Ray being on his back. And then, of course, it was always a stigma that, once you had Booker T in a match, you had to look over your shoulder, because not only is the NWO coming, but they bring your brother. So it's not like, they're just coming by themselves.
And it elevated, it helped to elevate Booker T
and Stevie Ray too.
Guy.
Because Stevie Ray was kind of a tag team person that, you couldn't really see without, but he did a lot more matches after that.
Anyone with the eyes, though, knew that Booker T was the star of the two.
Oh, absolutely.
And he was going to, and that's what it was done right. Again, another thing that was done right. Both guys were really, really good. I always liked Stevie Ray's work. He's a big guy, can move a bit. He wasn't like a technical wizard, but I mean, he got the job done. He was a big, giant dude and wrestled like he's a big, giant dude. I never had a problem with that,
Yeah.
And, he complimented Booker well, because Booker was a bit smaller. Booker's still huge, but smaller for.
He was the power to the group. And I think the biggest thing about him being the power to the group is that him breaking away kind of showed.
Very good.
Yes. His TV time was amazing.
Chris, last night I watched Sold Out 98, and I had Booker T versus Rick Martel, which was great. And then it led into Saturn and Booker T and Fit Finley. And then, that whole deal. Yes, that was very, very good. I love that stuff. That's why WCW was cooking at that time. Their undercard was really good in 98. Yeah. That's what you kept watching. WCW for me was their undercard. Well, the main events too. Like I was watching Goldberg. Like I wanted to see Goldberg crush dudes. That was amazing.
For
But
me,
like
98
NWO,
was
but
like
like
one of those years that you kind of had to look at the entire roster versus looking at your superstars, because at the top,
yeah,
you kind of still had who was still there from like 96, 97. You had Hogan, Hall, and Nash in a sense, and then you had Sting, Piper, who would come back every now and again, and then Steiner's, and it would just kind of be the same thing. So their mid card and their undercard was like,
it
all
was
right,
really good.
shuffling through, but it was some madness in there. But that tag team of Harlem Heat would have been great today, and it would have probably been one of the greatest tag teams of all time if they would have stayed together. In my mind,
Very good. Yeah, they
in
are. I
my
mean,
mind,
they're a
yeah.
fantastic team.
And
You can't
I
deny what they
don't look at
did.
it as like a fall off from Stevie Ray. I just think that it was just Booker's time. I just,
But Stevie was also older too.
yeah,
Like, yeah, I remember Stevie was like entering his 40s. Probably had been, had a lot of bumps, and obviously it was Booker's. And Stevie was probably like, yeah, all right with it. But it was I think it was a good, that was a good one. But we have to figure out the fifth one. Who's on the top five? And I got a couple of contenders. I don't
got
know
one. I got
who you
one.
put in. Okay.
I'm a WCW buff, so I'm bringing it back
Jesus.
to the WCW. Look, it might be WCW day for me. I don't know. But Rick
It
and Scott
is.
Steiner was the epitome.
Before I even said it.
The Rick and Scott Steiner was the epitome of brothers that couldn't be touched. When Scott became Big Papa Pump, and I've said this before on the show, when Big Papa Pump became who he was, it was the greatest turn of events ever, because you could never see that happening. Now, if you watch the show, like I watch the show regularly, you could notice over the weeks Scott's, his demeanor changed a little bit.
They built it nice. They built
They
it
built
nice.
it
You knew it
real
was
nice.
coming.
Because it was like, you can see it coming, but you can also see him as a person changing, not necessarily the tag team itself changing. Like, we're just not getting along. No, it was more like, motherfucker, you're not doing what I want you to do. You're not giving the attitude that I'm giving. Like, he wasn't, like Rick wasn't matching Scott's energy. And the thing about Scott was more or less in line with that NWO flex. Like, I'm big, I'm bad, and I can do it. And who else could become Big Papa Pump? I think that's just one of the greatest characters in my mind in WWE history. Is like I said, it had people's feelings attached to it, because of course you seen them come up, and like between Harlem Heat, the Steiners, and then you had the Outsiders, who kind of made that tag team division just bump for weeks, because it was like, who was going to hold the belts? Like, you had the Steiners, who were the natural tag team that everybody loved, because there was huge guys
brothers
who can beat the shit out of people. They kind of gave you that demolition feel, like, as far as, oh, you don't want to fuck with them two. Now, then you had Harlem Heat, who was...
But in real life, but in real life, you didn't want to fuck with them too.
Either.
Like, no, they were all Americans at Michigan, all American wrestlers at Michigan. They could just, as Kevin Nash, I think, once said about them, he's like, they just suplex you until you gave up. They were dangerous humans. So, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, no. But I'm saying,
like you had good.
You had great tag teams that were really good family members, and that like I said, that division was crazy. Like, if you ain't never watched WCW's tag team division, it was insane. So going from being the Steiners, who were just kind of a package deal, you couldn't see them without each other, then breaking them up and then having them feud. Another NWO breakoff, but I would say the more famous NWO breakoff, because Big Papa Pump became an entity at that point. He was just way more than what life had to offer. I mean, you got Steiner Math after that. You got the Big Booty Daddy.
That was years later, but yeah.
But you got him. So that's my pick. I put in the Steiners.
Okay, so I have two. I'm not sure though, but I got to mention both. So I got two ideas. First of all, the McMahons.
Oh.
I mean, like, two straight WrestleManias. WrestleMania 2000, each had a guy, and then WrestleMania Yeah, he did have a streak. And then like WrestleMania 17, where Vince worked Shane and Linda's in the corner. When she stands up, the pop she got, that was a huge pop, and it was just like the whole thing is like. So that's one. The other one I have is Ray and Dom. I think if we're going to be serious,
can't be mad about that.
I think Ray and Dom for me is the one because it was so well done. Because you never expected Dominic to become the heel that he's become.
That's what I'm saying. That's how I feel. I'm honestly like this list is gonna be hard because we have a solid 7 to 8 picks right now.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say none of them actually fall off to the others simply because of where they land.
But I think the McMahons, when you talk about like, even though it was like people might have been sick of it, like every week it was just like
that kept getting better. I don't like you can say people got sick of it, but the thing about people getting sick of it, it was they were sick of an angle that was actually working. Because Linda McMahon
was huge.
Like it became so big that
the Trish gimmick with Trish Stratus.
Oh my god, Trish Stratus was like perfect in that.
Oh man, and like I know in hindsight now it looks like
it looks kind of crazy.
You know,
they talk about it.
So, but it's still like you still have to. I think you know it was still an angle that did. It was unbelievable. Like they
threw Triple H in there to go ahead and marry.
Yeah, Stephanie. Triple H, the marriage thing. Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Whole thing was like you can say the McMahon family feud was probably the biggest family feud in history in WWE or in wrestling, simply because that was.
There's another one family. There's another one, the Bloodline. I don't think we've seen the feud part of it yet, so that's why I'm not including it. Because now we're going to see the feud part of it.
The reason why I wouldn't say the Bloodline just yet is because that family has been more about unity than anything. And I think the reason why I can't say them just yet is because, like you say, they haven't honestly feuded yet. There's been moments where they've broken up and not wanted to deal with each other, i.e. the Usos and Roman Reigns in the original Bloodline. Solo Sikoa just kind of breaking off and doing their own thing. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a feud just yet. They haven't had a legitimate match that kind of breaks it up. But I would honestly be like, if I said
I love Raven and the Sandman, but I will sacrifice it because
they gotta go. Yeah, I'm sorry, they gotta go.
Yeah, so at honorable mention list, there we go, because that has to be the list. So here's what the list is, I believe now, George. I think it's Ray and Dom, Eddie and Chavo, Owen and Brett, Booker T and Stevie Ray, and the McMahons. I think that's a really good.
Steiners.
What?
I would take Ray and Dom off of the Steiners.
I wouldn't.
Which one do you think is better?
Dom.
Bruh, do you not see how Rick Steiner was just... Bro, this is going to be the first legit argument that we have, because I'm telling you, like, you should know as an old school...
I should, but this is... I think it was so well done with Ray and Dom. I think the whole feud has been better. The feud, like, Papa Pump became a great star, but I prefer Ray. Like it was fucking great when Dom came out the goddamn thing with the chains as he was in fucking jail. It was money. I like the feud much better.
They went with it longer because of course, hell nah. Mongo and DDP for that dancer, hell nah. Wasn't that Diamond Dallas Page's wife?
Oh, come on, Chris. What are we doing? No.
You know, I'll let you have Dom and Ray because
it's money.
People hate it more. People hate Dom a whole lot more than they hated Rick and Scott after they broke up.
Oh my God!
You know what? You can honestly say the feud for Ray and Dom. If you've been watching wrestling as long as you and I have, this shit started when he was a kid and Eddie was trying to get custody. That's when that shit kind of started. That because basically they're living out that entire angle. When Eddie Guerrero said he was his father and he was trying to go ahead and come get Dom, and Ray wanted to fight for Dom.
I wish Eddie was my father.
So basically, they're fighting out this, after years, and you got a rebellious ass child. Now you have a rebellious child who's fighting against his father and really disrespecting his father on multiple occasions. And it's not like, I don't know.
You're not wrong, but I'm not going to mention it because I wasn't really watching at that point. So I can't really tell you.
The Bella Twins was a feud, but it wasn't a feud that would actually make this list because everybody else on this list, I'm not saying that they did much more after that. It's just simply because that feud kind of created them. The Bella Twins feud,
they were big stars. I mean, to their
they were
credit,
great stars. They was like, and nobody could expect them to break up because they're twins, of course. But at the same time, it just didn't. It wasn't as impactful as the people on the list. Right?
I don't know if it had the intensity that we kind of
put out there already. Yeah,
the other ones.
Like, you're not putting the Bella Twins on great knowing.
But also, I wasn't tuned in as much at that point. Saw a little bit, like I knew a bit of it, but but it wasn't Family Feud. I mean, you could argue, we got room probably on the honorable mentions list. We'll see if it gets there.
We'll see.
Anyway, look at where are we going? We got so number 5.
I would say Ray and Dom.
Ray and Dom is 5.
Mm-hmm. I got Booker and Stevie Ray at 4.
Yeah.
I have Owen and Britt 2, of course.
Yeah. Eddie and Chavo at 3.
Eddie and Chavo at 3, and then the McMahon's at 1.
That's 1, yeah. I think that's a fair list. Oh, to Eddie. I know. I love Eddie Guerrero. We were just talking about where might have an Eddie Guerrero show coming up, Kareem. So just.
Hey, you know what's all right? So I'm gonna spill the tea on the Eddie Guerrero show. Unfortunately, Eddie Guerrero just so happened to have passed on my birthday. So when I got up that morning and I found out that he passed, I was like, y'all can't tell me this shit till tomorrow. So my birthday's on a Wednesday this year, which we do most of our shows on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So I'm not gonna not sit out a show if we have an Eddie tribute. I just want to kind of put it out there that that'll be a really special day for me, simply because that was one of my favorite wrestlers at the time. And unfortunately, he had passed that day on my birthday, so I would not feel, any other way but grateful to even have a tribute to Eddie Guerrero on my birthday because he passed on that same day. So at the same time, 2005 and November 13, 2005, I always will remember. I'd never forget that date because a legend passed on that day. Like one of the greatest of all time died on that day, and he was not done. He was not done by a long shot. So if we do have a tribute show on my birthday for Eddie Guerrero, it's going to be top 5 Eddie matches from jump to finish. And
I was
giving y'all that.
Yeah, I was in Buffalo that day watching the Chiefs get beat 13-3 by the Bills. Larry Johnson ran for like 120 some yards, and I got booed out of the goddamn building. I came home hungover. Caught a nap. My wife woke me up and was like, "Hey, Eddie Guerrero died." I'm like, oh. But the tribute they did for Eddie was really well done. That was a really good one. Yeah, he was a talent. He was such a talented guy. I think WCW was the vote on him. Like, I think he was ready.
I would say so. I would definitely say that he was definitely ready to kind of do bigger things as far as getting into the fold of bringing up younger wrestlers that would have a similar skill set to him. Like, could you imagine what kind of training Ricochet would have if Eddie Guerrero was his teacher?
Yeah, I mean, depending. Yeah, I more meant like Eddie was ready as like in WCW to be a top guy. Like
he was only a world champion. Top guy in WCW. We all know.
I know, but he should have been.
He should look. There's 2 or 3 names that we can actually throw out there as far as who could have been on top in WCW in every year. But it's just the simple fact that WCW shot itself in the foot as far as the reason why we don't see these people as top guys. And so basically we would be trying to relive this company and rebuild it and redo it as far as, putting it back together and keeping it together. That's all we're doing by saying, if they would have kept this, if they would have did that. I don't necessarily believe WCW had longevity in its sights. I think it was more or less we got to beat these guys now. And if they couldn't do it, which they did it for a while, but
83 weeks.
Vince McMahon was like, "You got 84 weeks to beat me," and that's kind of how that worked. Like, yeah, you're going, we're going deep.
What conversation back?
I'm curious, but we don't go too deep into the idea.
I will. We mentioned 83 weeks. I will say a feud. It's not a family feud. It's a Twitter feud. I love the Twitter feud between Eric Bischoff and Dave Meltzer. Like,
That's gonna be something crazy. Them motherfuckers.
I love it. Eric Bischoff's so funny. I find it like the stuff he comes up with. He's just like. So yeah, I had to throw that in, but. So now we move on to the honorable mentions list. I moved down, obviously. I'm going to have the Raven and Sandman there. Yeah. Rick and Scott Steiner, Macho Man versus Elizabeth. Chris mentioned it. We got to kind of Kane versus The Undertaker.
Kane versus The Undertaker definitely can be another blood. That could be the number one honorable mention. Simply because Kane and Undertaker was brought together as brothers. And no one questioned it because they were both about the same size, which is I
wouldn't say nobody questioned it. Nobody cared.
That too. Nobody gave a shit. Nobody gave a shit after they realized they were brothers.
I did a Kane, and I did an English project once on storytelling patterns in literature, and I said, listen, pro wrestling has it. I forget what it was, but I used Kane and The Undertaker as an example of how pro wrestling uses literary story patterns. I got a good grade on it. Teacher's like, Jesus. I'm like, hey. But no, nobody cared. That was the thing. It was so well done. And like Kane was good and Undertaker was good. And they were just, and everything, Kane was shooting fire out of his ass and everything was just awesome. Like it was just really, really well done.
Like it was definitely something that people actually love for a long period of time. So we can definitely say, Kane versus The Undertaker can honestly be in there as a feud.
I'm sure.
Slightly. I'm gonna go honorable mention.
Yeah, we got one more spot.
Edge versus Matt Hardy.
That's what I had. That's exactly what I had.
Edge versus Matt Hardy. Because when Lita left that man alone. I ain't never seen nobody that fucking mad to come out and beat his own friend's ass. Like, you could tell there was so much heat behind that. Like, when I first seen Matt Hardy run out there, when his, Matt Hardy version 1 music hit and all that shit, and he was coming out to go ahead and fight Edge, like, you seen it, like, that was the first time I've seen WWE, one of the first times, that how they use the camera angle now from backstage all the way to the ring.
Yeah.
This is one of the first times you kind of see like when they brought Matt Hardy back, he was drinking that bottle of water, running by them goddamn 18 wheels trying to get to the stage. And then when he finally gets out there, the crowd goes fucking wild because they have no idea why he's out there. And then all of a sudden he grabs the mic. Lita, you whore. Oh, well, that's why he's here. So I would definitely put Matt and Edge.
I loved it, and listen, really as and just like maybe an example, Edge and Christian too.
Yeah,
I would put Hardy. I would put this one ahead of them though. But like again, like that's a good example of two guys who had real life heat who were able to work together, which is another frustrating thing about AEW is they were never able to get the guys to come together and work to make money off that real life hatred. I love that they did it, and they did it well, and they elevated both guys. Both guys got, Edge obviously got the rocket strapped to him, Canadian. Yeah, that's a great one. That was just The matches were good, and both guys knew how to work together. So yeah, that was on my list. So I mean, like these are the ones.
Yes. I think this puts out a really good list. I'm not mad about it at all. I think this is a list that we can honestly say that.
But Lita and Matt, Lita is what makes it.
Lita's what kind of ties them together.
Lita
tied them together.
Lita brings the family angle in.
Yeah,
that's
if it wasn't for her, if it wasn't for her, they wouldn't have fought. That's just the whole thing. If they wasn't for her, they wouldn't have fought.
Yeah, so kind of the Macho Hogan principle kind of type thing.
Right. That's kind of where I kind of seen that.
I see lust in those eyes.
I see lust in those eyes. You looking at Elizabeth. So
yeah. So I like that honorable mention list, like the Raven, Sandman, and those are good feuds, and like we'll see where the bloodline goes with this. Like I think they're still building that feud. And they're doing it in the right way. I don't think they're going to rush it.
I think with Jey Uso not necessarily being in the fold, it kind of makes for a more interesting turn down the line. Well, where we get.
Yeah, he'll go.
So we'll know he'll get there, but it's just how what fashion. So
you'll be seeing more super kicks in that ring in no time, baby. Don't you worry.
Hey, look. As long as they got a fresh pair of Air Force Ones on while they do it, I don't give a fuck. Let them fly. God damn it, let them fucking fly. But no, I think that with this list, we kind of put a little bit of insight on how close WWE actually gets sometimes, as far as how you can put family in the ring and how they can work together and make some of the greatest blood feuds ever. Like Owen and Brett. People didn't want to see that. People wanted to kind of see them, be together and just kind of, strive and be great together. And then, of course, you have the Hardys, you have Booker T and Stevie Ray. Like I say, it's just a way that you have to kind of look at everybody's, patterns of working. This list is not compiled of 5 random ass, people who are related. Like we're not taking Kerry Von Erich and throwing him in there against his brother because they just didn't like each other at dinner one night. Nah, this is definitely something that you wanted to stab a motherfucker. Like these people wanted to get it out of their systems and they wanted to fight. So if you ever have time, we'll put the list up and you can kind of go back and watch some of the cinematic things that kind of happened between these teams and some of the things that actually kind of transpired. Like some of the greatest matches won't even kind of register as the greatest match of all time, but some of these teams had some great matches against each other that you can honestly say that made them famous.
I want to add a caveat though.
Sure.
I think we're missing something on this list, and I think it needs to be added. I think we need to do just the Hearts, because you had Owen and Brett, you had Bulldog and Brett, you had Anvil mixed in. So I think you have to make the Hearts because
after a while,
because Brett and Bulldog had a banger at SummerSlam '92. That match was incredible, and they had a ton of good matches. They worked all the time. So they ain't making the list.
That's about as good as Hulk Hogan and what's his Horace
Hogan.
And Horace. Yeah, that's what you get when you put shit like the Flares in there. That's Horace and Hulk Hogan all over again. Not putting that shit on this list.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's talking about the Bulldog, Bret Hart,
not Rick
versus David Flair.
Talking about that, not talking about goddamn the Flares or Horace and Hulk. That shit.
Hogan and Beefcake's another one, because they were pretty much brothers, and then Beefcake turned on him, and for some reason they main evented Starrcade with that.
It happens. You got a lot of people who are in blood feuds that are just like, you can't explain it, but it made for great TV. It made for great.
No, he's not. He is not talking about Flair. I love Ric Flair.
It's no way.
I love Ric Flair, but
because David
it's
Flair,
just
it's like nah.
He just didn't have it as a wrestler. He did okay with that crowbar gimmick. They did all right with that.
I wouldn't even say that, because I was more along the lines of
he wasn't experienced. That was the thing. He just kind of got thrown to the wolves. It's like you're Rick.
He was seemingly trying to live off the hype of being Ric Flair's son more than actually having
that's what they wanted, basically. They wanted Ric Flair's son, but a younger version, and he's never going to be Ric Flair. And, you know, I think I did kind of like when they did the thing where he was nuts, you know, like, and see, I was going to, yeah, exactly. But they did the thing where he was, you know, kind of went with that group, and at least it made him different than just being Ric Flair's son. But he just didn't have the experience. He came in with like no experience. So, no. But the Bulldog versus Brett was a fantastic match. Oh my goodness! Anytime those guys worked, it was good. They had a good match at In Your House '95 or something like that. Just Bulldog getting just powerbombing Brett with blood on him. It's great. But
it was what it was, man. I think the big thing about the Hearts is that they can feud with any of them and make matches out of anybody. Like even if you had one day where you was like Anvil versus Owen or some shit like that, like or Davey Boy versus Brett, you know, that kind of
Davey Boy and Owen fought each other.
Whenever you kind of put those elements in the ring, it really doesn't matter how, you know, combustible they are. They're going to give you a good show. But at the same time, to have them as relatives fighting each other always made it better.
Davey Boy and Owen wrestled a great match on a Raw from Germany in like March of 1997. That's true. That wasn't bad. That wasn't bad at all. But I also Davey Boy had so Davey Boy and Owen had that match, and that was apparently the Raw that was so bad in the ratings that Vince McMahon hired Vince Russo. Yeah, apparently that's what Cornette says. That's why Vince started listening to Vince Russo, which we got like, again, like, you know, he likes to take credit for all of it, but I'm like, yeah, I'm sure he had his ear, but I think in the end we knew who was like making that decision. But that's, you know, like, it's funny how things work out. But another great match, Owen and Davey Boy, fantastic, just really good wrestling.
You know? I think they really have a lot of had a lot of different elements that kind of made them really, really good. I mean, you had the all around in Brett, you had the power in Anvil, you had the jock, I would say, in Davey Boy, and then you had Owen, who was just like the little brother that could. He was always going to be just as good as his brothers and all that. You can kind of feel that in the room. Like they brought their personalities to the table, and they actually let their personalities do work when they had to work together. So I like the fact that they use the angles of them being related, but they also use their abilities to kind of help them win matches and kind of put them through. So definitely a good list.
Definitely great list. Really good topic. I enjoyed this one. And yeah, man, it was fun. It was enjoyed. Like, share, subscribe, like us wherever you can. Thanks for the support. We appreciate it, man. This is just cool. Get to talk wrestling with you and interact with people. That's awesome.
Once a week, we definitely try to make sure that we give y'all some evil content. Never, you know, never the good stuff that you always.
Halloween Havoc show though. We should do a Halloween Havoc show coming up.
Halloween Havoc is right around the corner, and it's almost 2 weeks away. So
yeah, but like our top 5 favorite Halloween Havoc matches.
I can already tell you number 1.
I think I know number 1.
I think you got to know number 1. If it ain't Eddie and Ray, I ain't watching.
I think that's number 1. That would be the best one. But there's a lot of other really good ones, like Eddie and a lot of good ones, and a lot of good Halloween Havoc. So that's got to be a show coming up. But we should hop out of here, George. It's been a good night, good show.
Oh yeah, I ain't spilling too much of the beans tonight, baby. Y'all got to come back next week if y'all want some more. So like, share, subscribe, come back with your friends, hit the list, and see if you got another pair of families that you'd like to go ahead and see about that was feuding that kind of made you look a little bit to the left a little bit. So let us know how y'all felt about the show.
Give us some show suggestions.
Subscribe, give us some feedback, and of course, if y'all want to see us talk about some of these subjects that y'all have in y'all mind, we'll actually put a post out there and see if y'all y'all's information actually makes it to the show. Bad one. So
anyway, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Yeah, have a good one. Peace.